The most recent 4.0 patch has revealed a new addition to the Polaris. It's missing captain's quarters, and as promised, I'm revisiting the ship to give you a completed review with the final room finally added to the interior. So hop in with me once again as we take a look at the last missing piece to the Polaris puzzle. And if by the end you like the video and you want to see more videos like it, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button to show your support. Beginning at the bridge to give you guys a little bit of an idea of where it is on the ship if you missed the first video or you need a bit of a reminder, it's very close to the bridge as it probably should be. The captain's quarters is a kind of ready room to discuss matters with crew privately, as well as, of course, to have a place for the captain to rest when on or off duty. It's just in this midsection past the escape pods, and on entry, it's not quite as big as one might have expected. It's actually smaller than the Carrack's own captain's quarters for reference, which is a bit strange because the Carrack is substantially smaller than the Polaris. And notably missing is any kind of window, although this is par for the course for the rest of the ship as there aren't any windows in any other spaces except for the bridge. The plan though is well laid out, with the desk facing the door on entry with a bench directly across, display spaces in the back and shelving along the side to display the knickknacks the captain may have accumulated over the years, as well as some very utilitarian shelves. The back area even has a very cool mount to mount and showcase a weapon and a pistol, a new addition to Star Citizen, something we've not seen before, and the captain's desk itself has a good amount of space as well as a swivel chair that unfortunately doesn't work as of this current patch. That is not to say that you can't sit in it. You certainly can. It's just I've not figured out how to swivel it around to face the bench. A little unfortunate, but I'm sure it'll eventually get sorted out. Keeping in line with other ships Star Citizen has put out in recent years, it also has a light switch to toggle between various light modes. You've got an auxiliary mode, a main mode, as well as an emergency mode, which is pretty cool. Looks very moody in the auxiliary mode and probably improves the vibes just a little bit more than the flat regular mode, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. Red alert, of course, is extremely moody and reserved only for when there's an actual red alert. Just adjacent to the left of the door on entry is also an additional gun rack. Now this is a strangely located gun rack as it's accessible to anybody visiting the captain's quarters. I think it would have been better to have a cover over this and probably have this located behind the captain's desk, but maybe you trust everybody on board. I don't know if I do though. You might be wondering though where the captain's gonna get some shut-eye when off duty. That happens behind this glass partition just adjacent to the entry of the captain's quarters, and it's accessible by simply pressing the button directly next to the door. The inside of it is a bit more compact than, again, my comparison here being the Carrack, which by now, if you haven't guessed, is kind of my gold standard, I think, for ship interiors. You can see here it's almost as big as the captain's quarters itself, but while it's Spartan, it does still have all the amenities you might expect: a suit locker, private storage, as well as the captain's own private head. Which I'll note also has one of those fancy sort of mirrors, which is actually just a screen. It doesn't show your head if you're wearing a helmet for some reason. I think this is a bug, but I'll let it slide here. It'll get sorted at some point. Notably missing here though are any additional storage cubbies for while laying in bed to maybe put books or something to read, and a private reading light, but it's probably not a big deal. Overall though, I think that there's one area where it falls a little bit short, and I think it's in the lighting department. This is kind of an issue throughout the entire Polaris, if you remember my tour from earlier for doing the whole ship. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it down below. Now before, my comment was that I thought the materials were just a little bit too plain, but I actually think it might not be that much of an issue because the Carrack is also actually pretty plain when it comes to texturing. What it is, I think, is actually just the lighting. The lighting doesn't provide a whole lot of contrast in the space, and unfortunately, as a result, it does make things look a little bit more flat than they otherwise would be. There's a lot of missed opportunities in leveraging detail moments to add accent lighting to highlight different parts of the space to give the space just a bit more contrast and drama. Now, when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about a luxury look. I'm still talking about going for that military look, but more so in the vein of not real life, but instead what we'd see on TV. Think like the interiors of the Battlestar Galactica in the more recent series from the early 2000s. What I think is really successful about these spaces is that they're not obviously lit for a TV show, but if you look closely, you'll notice that there is some lighting that doesn't make a whole lot of sense if it were to have been built in real life, but you don't really notice that watching the show, and that's the success of it. It gives the space a lot more depth and contrast for the TV show. On film, it looks fantastic. It looks like a military ship set sometime in the distant future or past, if you know what I'm talking about. Really, if you look at this compared to a real CIC, it's nothing like it. In fact, it's just maybe a little bit disappointing. And you might argue that, well, maybe Star Citizen should go for that ultra-realistic look, but I remind you that Chris himself was inspired by Wing Commander to make Star Citizen, which was inspired originally by Battlestar Galactica, the original series, not the 2000s one, but the 2000s one follows that kind of language very closely anyway, just modernized for a more modern audience. So I would think it would be absolutely appropriate to use them as reference material, but hey, that's just me and how I would direct things, but I don't work at CIG, I'm just here to critique it. But I think that this highlights once again how important lighting is to make a design look better. You can have the most beautifully modeled and well thought out space, but if the lighting doesn't quite match up to it to emphasize the good points of the space, well, then it can all read as a little bit flat and poorly detailed when that's not at all the case. And I think that that's kind of the issue with, again, not just the captain's quarters, but the whole ship in general. And I once again want to reference the Carrack's interior because I think the lighting in that ship was done really well. There's a lot of contrast and good lighting accents to highlight details in the space, and I'll remind everybody that this actually is not just an exploration ship, but a military ship. It was commissioned by the UEE Navy and lore, so it is a Navy ship. So there's no excuses here for the lighting differences. It's just a design decision that CIG have made that I think is maybe not quite as good as what they've made in the past. Now, I was originally going to talk about the ship's performance and combat in this video, but I'm going to leave that for yet a separate one because I don't think it really fits here in the interior design review. Do you like the Polaris's new captain's quarters? Do you like the lighting or do you dislike it? Do you think it could have been improved like I've highlighted in the video? Feel free to disagree down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And as always, if you like the video and you want to see more, you know what to do. Hope to see you in the next one.